Today I want to make a video on this Twitter thread that was sent to me a few weeks ago because I feel like a video needs to be made on this topic. Because as you see right here, it's based on this this line that I've heard numerous times through various sources, many on the left, that says a Fed survey shows that 40% of adults can't cover a $400 emergency expense. And usually this line is used to convey that Americans are struggling. A lot of Americans are poor, they can barely get by. And look at this, a survey says that 40% of Americans, 2 out of every 5 Americans, can't even cover an emergency expense when it comes up. This sounds horrible. Now, I have always been a little skeptical of this talking point, although part of me thought that there might be a lot of truth to it because I think a lot of Americans are just horrible and irresponsible when it comes to finances. But I don't think this is really an issue of being rich or poor or how much money you make, because even people that make a lot of money, even people that make well over 6 figures a year, still live paycheck to paycheck and don't know how to handle their finances. And there's this documentary that I've referenced numerous times. It's an ESPN 30 for 30 called Broke. And I know all documentaries should be taken with a grain of salt, but even if you don't like sports, this is a really good documentary, and it shows this epidemic of athletes, professional athletes from the 90s, the 1990s to now, who are making tens of millions, some of them making hundreds of millions of dollars over a career. And many of these guys are broke after retirement. They don't have any money, including Antoine Walker, who made, I think, over $200 million playing basketball alone. Allen Iverson is another guy who made well over $200 million just playing basketball. Again, this does not count endorsements and other sources of revenue. And these guys are broke. They don't have any money in retirement. But the point of this is that even if you make lots of money, there's evidence to show that even if you make millions of dollars, you still might not be able to cover emergency expenses because you're just fucking stupid with your money. In fact, there was actually a story a few weeks ago about how I think the average person spends $1,400 a month on stuff they don't need, like going out to eat and getting a cup of coffee every morning at Starbucks or whatever. And the overall message of the article is that people, Americans, should really be saving and investing more, but they choose to spend money on crap they don't need. So long story short, I thought there was some truth to this line, but I also did not think it was really indicative of the fact that people were struggling financially. It's just a result of people making bad decisions. But Paul Miller decided to take a deep dive into this issue, and as he shows, this talking point is often thrown around. He's showing a screenshot of various headlines by Market Watch and Washington Post and The Atlantic and CNN and CNBC, showing how often this line is published. And as you can see, Paul Miller really went to the sources here. He went to the Federal Reserve's sources, which were used, I think, a survey to show this number. And as Paul Miller shows in point number 5 right here, only 12% of people could not actually pay the expense, and a smaller amount would have to borrow the money. And he says, keep in mind, this could be double counted. Paul Miller also says, also notice the main report counts borrowing money as not being able to meet the expense. 38.8% of people would borrow money and pay it off at the end of the month. In other words, 38.8% of the people would be able to afford this expense before the month is over. Combining with cash, though some people may have indicated both by accident, it is close to 80%. Now, I do want to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. Being able to borrow the money technically means that you can still afford the emergency expense. Sure, you do not have the money with you in your bank account right away to pay off the expense, but if you have lines of credit available to you, made available by credit card companies or other lenders, basically what they're saying is that they have confidence that you're going to be able to afford this expense over a prolonged period of time. At the very least, what these lending companies are saying is that you have a very high potential to pay all of this money back with interest. In other words, if the lending company was not confident that you could pay the money back, or did not think that there was a high potential to get their money back, well, then they would not lend you the money in the first place, because these lending companies are in the business of making money. And I don't think just giving money away to people who can't pay it back is a very profitable business model. And yeah, a lot of people take issue with the fact that lending companies charge interest. And yeah, I hear this a lot from morons on the left, especially when it comes to student loans. Or I remember hearing this talking point during the housing crisis about how people, once they pay back the principal, why should they pay back the rest of the money? After all, the lender got all the money back that they lended out. The fact of the matter is interest is the price you pay on borrowing the money. What you are paying for is delayed gratification. So say right now I had $10,000 in my bank account. What could I do with that $10,000? I could really enjoy that $10,000 right now. I could spend that $10,000 on a nice luxurious vacation in the Bahamas and lay around on a beach drinking nice pina coladas and ride around on jet skis and go on a boat. I could do a lot of awesome stuff with that $10,000. But if I were to lend that $10,000 up, what I'm doing is I'm giving up my ability to use that money on stuff that would make my life happier and better right now. When I am lending someone that $10,000, I am giving up my ability to go enjoy a nice vacation in the Bahamas, or maybe put down a down payment on a nice new car or whatever. So if I'm gonna postpone my ability to use the $10,000 in my bank account, I'm gonna wanna get compensated for that. Anyway, as Paul Millard goes on to say in point number 7, as you can see with the screenshot, how would a $400 emergency expense that you had to pay impact your ability to pay your other bills this month? And 83.6% said, I would still be able to pay all of my bills in full. Meaning that this statistic probably contradicts a lot of the people who said that they would not be able to afford the $400 emergency expense. But then Paul Millard went on to find the supplemental data from the 2017 report. Again, this is a more recent report, which shows that 85% of Americans would be able to pay their bills in full after a $400 emergency expense, meaning that at most, only 15% of Americans cannot afford a $400 emergency expense, which is 25% less than what most people are reporting. But just think about what this says about the state of American media. Journalists and pundits either knowingly spread this misinformation just to score political points and give their hot takes with these clickbait headlines, as Paul Millard suggests, and or these people are just intellectually lazy and never bothered to really look into this and see whether or not it's true. In other words, there's a significant amount of people in the American media that are either lazy or just flat out liars. And again, I'm going to link to this Twitter thread down below, but given how much this information is going around, I thought that this topic deserved a little more exposure than just a thread on Twitter.